I hope that you are full of energy after you drank some coffee. Our next speaker is Amir Schwartz. Amir is the CTO of Citi Security Innovation Center, and he's a senior R&D manager with broad experience in delivering complex software solutions and products. Strong background in cybersecurity, as well as various software development technologies, process tools, and methodologies.
Thank you. So, hi everybody, welcome, good morning. My name is Amir Schwartz. I'm the CTO of the Security Innovation Center of Citi here in Tel Aviv in Israel. And I'll be talking a bit about some of the issues or challenges that we have today in security operations and incident response, we as the industry as a whole, not necessarily Citi. And I'll also try to talk a bit about some of the trends and evolutions, not necessarily revolutions, but evolutions that we see in technology that might help us to address and perhaps handle or cope with some of these challenges. So, a few words about Citi and about the team that I belong to. As you probably know, Citi is one of the leading international financial institutions, part of the fabric that actually supports the global economy. We are a very large organization. You can find some statistics here on the slide. We have hundreds of millions of customers. We have hundreds of thousands of employees, endless number of endpoints, servers, devices, very complex, complicated, distributed environment and network. Citi is actually one of the biggest banks in terms of the global reach. So we are operating all over the world, but we have physical presence in over 100 countries. So it's again, a very complex environment. And in many senses, we are a large bank wrapped around a very large and complex technology organization. Okay, there are over 50,000, some even say 70,000 people in Citi globally who work in technology, which is larger than many of the high-tech companies that you can think of. So that's Citi, and we have the privilege of being targeted by basically everybody, all sorts and all kinds of adversaries and attackers. And as such, we have to invest a lot into cybersecurity in order to protect both our customers and ourselves. As part of that effort, the team that I am part of, the Security Innovation Center, was opened here in Israel. And our mission is basically to identify, to help design, help introduce and bring into the organization new innovative solutions in cybersecurity. So the team here opened in 2014, a few years ago, almost 3 years ago, opened here in Israel in order to utilize, to leverage the very unique ecosystem we have here in cybersecurity. And we are working globally across the organization, across Citi, all over the globe, actually engaging with a lot of different stakeholders and internal customers from very different areas of the company. So working a lot, obviously, with the information system groups and teams, working with the security engineering, with security operations, and in many cases with the business units themselves. So we have a very broad reach internally. We also work very extensively with the industry. So we are working with basically all the major vendors in cybersecurity. Many of them, by the way, have local R&D hubs here in Israel, and also with hundreds of startup companies. Again, trying to identify where new and innovative solutions in cybersecurity can be leveraged, can be brought into the organization, in which way exactly, and I'll talk about the challenges we have on that a bit. We also do internal innovation where that is relevant and applicable. For example, data science, again, I'll talk about that a bit, so we do a lot of work internally around that as well. And we try to keep a very broad perspective and look at many different areas of cybersecurity, but also focus on several specific key areas, such as cloud security, identity and access management, application security, and obviously security operations and intelligence, and many others. So that's a word about the team. I'm going very briefly to talk about some of the challenges okay, that we have and that we see in security operations. I'll do that again very briefly because I'm sure that you all know those challenges, so I won't spend too much time on them. We are already, again, as everybody, as the industry, we are already doing quite a lot today. We invest a lot into cybersecurity, and I'm referring here to the aspect of security operations. So we have, teams doing SecOps, teams doing investigation, teams doing forensics. We use a lot of tools. We invest a lot of money and resources into buying products and controls that will help us to protect the environment, to detect if anything bad is happening, and also to react, mitigate, and fix the problems. So we are all using a SIEM product. We might have some big data platform, Hadoop or whatever you are using. We have all those great controls. We have the teams in place. We have the processes, etc. But still, is that enough? So we are still seeing challenges and problems that we are trying to face. So here are some of them. Again, not all, and we'll just do it very, very rapidly. First reality is that we have very complex and dynamic networks and environments. And it's not only in an organization as large as Citi, okay? But the reality is that the domain we need to protect is changing rapidly. Obviously, things like mobile, cloud, which is becoming more and more evident, and by the way, raises a lot of challenges for organizations such as Citi in the financial sector. But still, cloud is a reality, and it will only get more and more common. I'm not even talking about IoT, which is going to bring down the last frontiers all the way. So it's becoming much more complicated to actually protect our environment. The sophistication of the attacks and the attackers, okay, so the days of some hacker sitting in some basement, writing some virus and releasing it publicly to the internet are long gone. Some of the attacks are very sophisticated. Organizations are very large. They have a lot of resources, a lot of money to invest. Obviously, that's the reality that we are facing. Huge amounts of noise and alerts. Okay, so we, in security operations, we get tremendous amounts of alerts of events that are being generated by all those tools and systems that we are using. It's becoming a real challenge to be able to cope with that, to scale that. Again, obviously in an organization as large as Citi, but it doesn't have to be that large. Even a much smaller organization has real challenges with being able to actually process all that information coming in and being able to use it correctly, or actually be able to identify the real cases, the real problems, and filter out all the noise. There are already too many security products and technologies. Sorry for all the vendors, okay, but that's the problem that we have today. Citi, for example, uses dozens of security products, best of breed, okay? It's becoming more and more complex to manage that, to actually use that in a coherent way, okay? We meet with a lot of vendors, a lot of startups. Sometimes there are very exciting new features, capability, products, technologies. It's becoming more and more difficult to consume that, okay? How do we actually take a new piece and plug it into the complex puzzle we already have today? Availability of professional people in SecOps, you all know that it's already very difficult to find experienced people that can actually handle security operations, analysts, SOC people, etc. And it's only going to get harder and harder to be able to fill the ranks and help us to actually be able to protect ourselves efficiently. And there is a basic asymmetry between the attackers and the defenders. That's, again, a well-known fact. It's very difficult for us as the defenders to handle or to cope with the attackers. We need to be alert 100% of the time. We need to protect everything 24/7. Okay, we must not fail even once. The attackers needs to penetrate, to be successful in one attempt. Okay, so the asymmetry here is very significant. And again, we can talk a lot about these problems and others, but I'm sure it's something that you all feel as well. So, assuming that we are doing a lot, we are already investing a lot, we are already using the tools, the technologies, the processes, the knowledge, and we are still facing with those kinds of challenges. The question that should be asked is, what can we do, what should we do next? So what I'm what I will try to do in the next few minutes is describe a few technologies or areas of technologies or directions or trends that we are seeing. Some are more mature, more available. Some are still a bit early stage and less consumable at this point. And those directions, those are areas that we are looking at, that the industry is looking at, and can perhaps help us to start address some of these problems and take our SecOps to the next level. The first thing is automation. So IR automation is actually a very mature, relatively very mature area in terms of there are many products out there that can be used in order to accommodate this need. It's actually a very busy, very dynamic space. There are roughly around 15 to 20 maybe companies, vendors doing IR automation. Some are startups, some are larger vendors. There has been several acquisitions in this space lately. So it's very dynamic and thriving. Basically, the idea here is the analyst, the security operation people, a lot of what they do is very monotonic, routine, standard types of operations. So if we can find a way to automate those elements, okay, maybe handling some aspects of the process, okay, maybe even resolving end-to-end some classes of cases, we can significantly reduce the amount of work that these guys need to do and help them to focus their resources, their attention on the more sophisticated cases that we actually need to handle. So I personally think that this class of solutions is one of the most promising one in terms of the ROI it can give you. With relatively low amount of investment, you can dramatically sometimes improve your security operations practice. So automation. Correlation. Correlation refers to how do we group different alerts, different events that we get and understand that they are all actually connected, related to the same incident. Okay, so as I'm sure you know, in some cases, a single breach attempt, a single attack can generate hundreds, thousands, sometimes even hundreds of thousands of alerts. Okay, all sweeping into the SOC, into the Security Operations Center from many different tools that you might have, many different sensors, and if you try to handle each and one of those alerts separately, independently, then sometimes you miss the whole picture. So if we can somehow automatically, using technology, correlate those events and understand that they are all related to each other, first of all, it can help us to mitigate, to actually resolve the issue quicker, and also dramatically reduce the load and the amount of work that we need to invest. Collaboration is a key aspect. And there are many different layers or levels of collaboration. First of all, collaboration in terms of the industry. I think that there is a change in the state of mind in recent years, and organizations from all types and all sectors understand that we must start communicating, sharing information, and collaborating. Obviously, that's a challenge. In many cases, the information that is related to security, to cybersecurity, is very confidential, is very sensitive. In some cases, we are not allowed to share information due to regulation or compliance. But still, I think that everybody starts to understand that, again, if I'm referring to that asymmetry I mentioned earlier, it is much more difficult for us as a single organization, even an organization in the scale of Citi, to cope with some of the adversaries. It will be much better if we can collaborate to some extent with other entities. So there is collaboration in the government level. We just heard in this week in this conference about the collaboration between Israel and the United States, Israel and Britain, Israel and Singapore, and there are many other relationships and links. Collaboration between peers. Okay, so financial institutions share information to some extent. Okay, there's collaboration between vendors in some cases. So vendors actually competing in the same space understand that it will be beneficial for them as well as for the customers if they share information in some cases. Now, what's interesting in collaboration is that for large organizations such as Citi, which are so complex and diverse, there is a lot to improve and to do with internal collaboration. Okay, so we have groups involved in the process of SecOps and IR. Those can be different groups. Some of them are very large. They can be dozens, even hundreds of people. They are geographically located in different places, in different time zones. So if you have, for example, an intelligence analyst, a very good one, who is doing great work on tracking some adversary, writing a very important or very good report, and that information doesn't flow to the SOC, for example, then that's a miss. Okay, how do we improve the internal processes, the flow of information? How do we collaborate internally to actually create a better security posture and allow the organization to cope better with those kinds of threats? So collaboration, again, can be considered in many different ways and aspects. Hunters again and versus firefighters. Everybody today wants to be a hunter. Okay, take a spear and start running in cyberspace, hunting bad things. But actually, there is also some sort of a shift or a change here. So we all understand it's not enough to be compliant. Obviously, we can check all the check boxes. That's not good enough, and it's in some cases not even enough to be reactive. So we can have the best SOC. Okay, we can have the best people, we can have the best tools, we can have the best processes and all the collaboration and information flowing in the world, but still, okay, if we are only reacting, only sitting down waiting for the alert or for the bell to ring and then trying to find out what's happening, whether this is a true incident, whether it's a false positive perhaps, and then try to understand what exactly is happening, what's the breach, try to mitigate that, handle that, etc. That's not good enough. We need to change our state of mind. We need to move from being reactive to being proactive. Okay, we need to start doing stuff in order to prevent. We need to assume that we are already breached or going to be breached. Okay, and the question is, what do we do? How do we find those sophisticated attackers before even they step on one of our sensors and raise a bell? Data analytics is everywhere. Okay, so it's data science, data analytics, machine learning, AI, whatever. There's a lot of buzz around it. Okay, we have to admit everybody today is doing something with data analytics. If you are not, then you are not cool. But still, actually, there is a lot of value in data analytics and data science, specifically when you talk about cybersecurity, and that's one of the areas that we are working on in our team here in Israel, obviously with the global teams as well. One of the things that we have a lot in Citi is data. We have tons and tons of data. We are trying to figure out new, different views or aspects on how to use the data that we have already in order to answer, to try to address some of the challenges and the problems that we have. And we find very interesting use cases and ways to reuse or use that data in different ways, okay, that it was intended for. So that's an area I personally think there is a lot of value in. It's a bit more complicated to actually do something in this area because it requires speciality, it requires resources, it requires, in some cases, ability to do things internally. There are areas where you can find off-the-shelf products that are based in a significant way on data science or machine learning, for example, insider threat. So there are several companies, vendors doing insider threat, which is based in the technology in its core is based on data science or data analytics, and you can actually buy those products and they will probably work for you in your organization. But in some cases, the data is proprietary. So for us at Citi, for example, some of the data is specific. Okay, it's not something generic that anybody else knows. The tools or the products that are generating the data are proprietary, or the processes. In some cases, the data is confidential, so we cannot actually give it to vendors. We cannot take it outside the premise of the organization. So some of this work has to be done internally. So it's a bit more challenging, the entry barrier, but again, the results and the impact of taking a set of data and actually trying to leverage it to solve a problem can be very significant. Well, skip that. And the last thing is advanced visualization. So if you take a look at a SOC analyst, your typical SOC analyst, he or she are probably using a variety of tools. So they have the SIM tool, they have the big data tool, they have all kinds of consoles, all kinds of products that they are using in order to actually conduct the investigation. Most of the screens that they are looking at, most of the data they consume is still alphanumeric data, tabular data, okay? In some cases, there are some quite basic graphics, 2D graphics, maybe charts, maybe graphs. We think, and again, we are starting to see that very, very early stage in some of the technologies and the products that are available out there, that advanced visualization techniques can significantly improve the way that analysts use information, consume information. It can be much more efficient, much more intuitive for an analyst to actually use that data, the same data that they get today, but simply in a different way, in a different model or a different visual representation. And it also obviously can, in some cases, help them to get new insights. So it's not only more efficient and more friendly, but also in some cases they can actually get new insights that they would not be able to get, or it would be very difficult to get in any other way. So we believe that this is a very interesting and promising area as well. So those are some of the trends, okay, some of the areas that we are looking at and we think are happening out there. As I mentioned, some of these technologies are more mature, more available, more consumable at this point. Some are a bit further ahead. But what can we do now? What can you do now if you want to actually start, taking your SecOps to the next level? So here are some suggestions. I would start with automation. Definitely, I think that automation is one of the best places to start and with the biggest ROI. Even if you just automate the data collection phase, the enrichment, okay? When an analyst starts handling a case, they need to get all that information. Even if you automate only that part, you can save a lot of time that is being done today manually. And as mentioned, resolving some classes of simple, basic cases end-to-end can also save a lot of effort. Intelligence-led operation, taking that mind shift, that leap into moving from being reactive to being proactive, starting to use intelligence, whether as a product or as a service, and building the framework and the process around that to actually use it and plug it into the rest of the organization that you have. Better using what you have today. You will be surprised or not to find out how many of the tools that you already have are not being utilized or fully utilized. They are not configured correctly. They are not used correctly. Maybe you have out-of-the-box integrations that you can already use. You don't need to build or develop anything else. And as mentioned, data analytics. Again, that might be a bit more difficult to get into, but at least start with off-the-shelf products that are based on data analytics for specific use cases that are relevant for you. That's it. Do we have time for? Thank you very much.